So as with every tech-enabled conference, there's always going to be a little bit of challenges in troubleshooting for presentations, being on mute. We've been living through it at an accelerated pace with COVID. But I'm excited to be here, and I want to thank Marjorie and her team for having me take part in this incredible conference today. I want to make sure that everyone can hear me, so I'm just going to do a little sound check. Guys behind the scene, can you hear me? Just want to make sure. I don't have headphones on with this computer. Perfect. So my name is Shaina Silva. I'm a Haitian American woman working in technology based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm very involved in developing the technology and entrepreneurship ecosystem in Haiti. So today, the conversation that I will be having is around building the ecosystem. But before doing that, I want to shed a little bit of light on what exactly is an ecosystem. We hear that word mentioned quite a bit. It gets thrown around in various ways, but many of us don't actually know what an ecosystem is and what it is made of and why it exists and how it is used to support entrepreneurs. So before we get into that, however, I want to take this time to celebrate some of the women pioneers of our time. Black women who have blazed the trail for us, people like myself and many of you who are following today, to be able to take on opportunities like we're able to afford in present day. Now, it's Women's History Month, so I could not start a conversation around supporting Black women entrepreneurs and in technology without paying ode or giving a spotlight to some of the incredible inventors and innovators who have come before us. So I'll start with Mary Canner. Mary Canner was an African-American inventor who revamped the world of feminine care with the invention of the sanitary belt. If you're a woman, then you know that once a month, you get that little friend that comes over knocking, and thanks to Mary Canner, we have a solution that allows us to function our day-to-day activities without being hindered by what this periodic visitor tends to do. So thanks to Mary Canner, we have a sanitary belt. Now, Mary Canner also invented the toilet paper holder, a brilliant American inventor. Next up, Mae Jemison. Mae Jemison, who is an astronaut, was the first Black woman to travel into space. So many firsts. Next up, we have Shirley Chisholm, the first Black female US representative and the first Black majority party candidate for president and the first Democratic Party woman to run ever. Inspiring woman. Next up, we have the brilliant, talented Madam C.J. Walker, first African-American millionaire ever. Invented her line of beauty products, the Madam C.J. Walker hair and skin care line. Let's keep going. Next up, we have Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, 24th president of Liberia, and the first elected female head of state in Africa. And then finally, Ursula Burns, CEO of Xerox, and the first among Black women to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I just want to take some time to let us digest all of these first women, first Black women, in many positions that have never seen women before and certainly not have seen Black women before. Now, these women were the first, but they certainly are not the last. We have come a very long way in having Black women represented in politics, in business, in all sectors of society. And what we've seen has happened more and more is that women are taking on leadership positions in various companies that are multinational organizations impacting thousands, millions of people around the world. I'm going to take some time to say their names because it's so important for us to recognize powerful Black women who have taken on leadership positions in spaces that were never afforded to women in general, and certainly not for Black women. So I'm going to say a few names. Suzanne Rice, who sits on the board of Netflix. Edith Copper, who sits on the board of Slack and Etsy. Pamela Carter, who sits on the board of HP. Myrtle Potter, who sits on the board of Genentech. Linda Johnson Rice, who sits on the board of Tesla. Melody Hobson, who sits on the board of Starbucks. Andrea Wisham, who sits on the board of Pinterest. And Peggy Alford, who is an SVP at PayPal. Extremely powerful Black women. There are more. And I'm only using these images and this list to paint a picture of how many Black women actually exist in these leadership positions. But many of us don't actually know that they exist. Many of us have never heard their names before. Many people are hearing the name Rosalind Brewer for the very first time. However, she sits as a chairwoman on the board of Starbucks. Many people have never heard of Linda Gooden, but she sits on the board of Lockheed Martin, one of the most powerful technology companies that services the US government in the world. Or Helen Gale, who sits on the board of McKinsey. Or Mo Abudu, Nigeria, who is the CEO of Ebony Life TV, one of the most popular media platforms in Nigeria and across Africa. So this was just to paint a picture and pay homage to some of these brilliant Black women who are leaders today. And take a step back in not only acknowledging them, but recognizing that even though we have come a very long way, we still have a long way to go. Now, even though this list is beautiful, it's actually quite small in the grand scheme of things. Today, as statistics have shown and as research has shown, there has only been an increase of 24% of women, Black women in the C-suite over the past 5 years. 24%. Can you imagine that? So there's a really big challenge that we're facing today where more and more women are taking on these roles, but the percentage increase is so small in the grand scheme of things. So there is a need to widen that door and allow more Black women to step in. And one of the best ways to do that is actually supporting women entrepreneurs, the future leaders, the next generation of leaders who are building businesses, platforms, ventures, new systems and softwares that will be the ones to lead the next companies of the future that we want to work for. And that will be the ones to hire the types of talent that is diverse and that is inclusive. So supporting women entrepreneurs who are building the businesses of the future is an incredibly important aspect of increasing that percentage that we see right here on the screen, from 24% to 50%, if not at full parity. So how do we do that? How do we get more women into the pipeline? So to take a little bit of a step back, for those who have never heard of the word ecosystem before, I'm going to just share a little bit about what that is. In a startup ecosystem, or in any ecosystem that is biological, you have a series of stakeholders who work together as a network to support growth inside of that environment, right? If you're part of a forest ecosystem, the soil, the trees, the bugs, the birds, the bees, they all play a role in that ecosystem, right? When it comes to a startup ecosystem that supports the growth of entrepreneurs, you have similar actors who are playing those kinds of roles. You have funding organizations like venture capitalists. You have support organizations like NGOs or people who are hosting events like Marjorie's Women of Vision conference happening today. You have service providers like legal firms or accounting firms who provide services to businesses. You have government entities who are creating the rules and regulations, the policies and the tax breaks that allow businesses to thrive. You have research organizations and academia who are pumping out the talent and creating the new insights into industries and how we should be thinking about the future of how we're building things. And then finally, you have large corporations, companies like the Googles and the Facebooks of the world who are mature and can leverage their residual capital to feed back into smaller companies that may be strategic of interest for them. Those are some of the actors that play a significant and important role in allowing entrepreneurs to thrive. Now, when you think about the startup ecosystem in the context of an emerging market like Haiti, which is where I'm from, this is a very similar ecosystem. However, some of these stakeholders are not quite performing at the speed that would allow startups to actually thrive, right? So before I get into that, I'm going to give you an example of a startup ecosystem that works very well, like the ones in Italy. The Italian startup ecosystem is extremely mature. So you'll see just by this visual that there are many actors in the ecosystem, a lot of incubators, a lot of accelerators, a lot of people hosting events to build networking opportunities, a lot of people who are looking to fund and invest in entrepreneurs from Italy, a lot of science parks and people who are building spaces where technology can be experimented on. A lot of media entities who are highlighting success stories to showcase Italy as a destination for innovation. It is an extremely robust startup ecosystem. Now let's look at an emerging market landscape that is doing similarly as well, but can be a little bit more comparable to Haiti, where it's brand new, the African ecosystem. The African ecosystem is extremely new, but has been growing extremely fast. In the past 5 years alone, we've seen an incredible number of financing entities wanting to invest in African tech startups, and a lot more conversation around investing in women-led African tech startups. So you'll see entities like She Leads Africa and CC Hub creating programs that are supporting specifically women-led tech startups. Now, just based by this picture, you'll see that there are a lot of entities in the African startup ecosystem that are supporting entrepreneurship. Hundreds and thousands of accelerators and incubators across the continent. A lot of media platforms that are talking about success stories coming out of the African continent. Success stories are so important in painting the picture to the rest of the world that there are opportunities that exist in this place. And so, as you may know, the conversation around the African tech ecosystem has not always been positive, right? But a lot of young people, a lot of startups who have recognized this gap in narrative have created their own media platforms to start sharing those stories and raising the profile of Africa as a destination for innovation. So those media entities in the ecosystem are extremely important to bring some visibility and knowledge on what exactly is happening. Now, if I take it to the Haitian startup ecosystem, specifically focused on women, we have a lot of actors that actually exist today. However, not nearly enough to truly support an accelerated pace of startup growth, right? So if we look at the workspaces and accelerators that exist, we have Impact Hub and Alpha Haiti, Bange, Cedel, She Builds, and Girlpreneur Haiti, who are all creating programs to support women entrepreneurs in their journey of building a business. We have developer communities like Facebook Developer Circles or Google Developers, but not nearly enough who are churning out the number of developers who can actually help to build technologies. We have a number of business networks like the NAHP and Startup Grind, AmCham, or the Boss Lady Forum, who organize regular events and convenings to allow actors in the ecosystem to get together and network with one another. Now, in terms of corporations, we have a few corporations who actually consistently support the startup community. CBC, Caribbean Bottling Company, owned with Cooley Gunn, Sogebank, Digicel, and there are a few others, but not a whole lot. The government, as we've known, for those of us who are following that are Haitian in the audience, we know that the government has been one of the biggest roadblocks in creating an enabling environment. And one of the biggest reasons for that is the political instability. The political instability creates insecurity. The insecurity creates a risky environment, and a risky environment just is not attractive for investors and makes it very difficult for startups or entrepreneurs to try to build a business on a consistent basis. It's extremely volatile. But the government has an important role to play in not only ensuring security and not only ensuring stability, but in also providing the policies and the laws that allow businesses to feel safe when they are creating opportunities for job creation. Now, the media landscape in Haiti in the ecosystem is also extremely, extremely tight. And what I mean by that is that there are very few media entities that actually churn out success stories or positive stories around what's happening in the entrepreneurial landscape in Haiti. So we don't have a lot of people who are being spotlighted on a regular basis to inspire the Haitian community or the international community enough to feel as if there is opportunity in Haiti. And as you'll see here in this grid, on the media front, we have very few media platforms who are actually churning out these stories, and not necessarily on a consistent basis. The Haitian Times covers a wide range of stories, not necessarily just entrepreneurship. So it's not enough to create momentum. Loop Haiti sometimes covers entrepreneurship. L'Union Suite, Le Nouveliste, Chocarella, all of these sometimes cover entrepreneurship, but not enough to really push inspirational stories to the extent in which that would make it an exciting space to come and play in. Now, the last piece of the ecosystem that I want to touch on is the investor community. Unfortunately, in the Haitian startup ecosystem, particularly for women, there exists zero traditional investors. And what I mean by traditional investors is the venture capitalists who will invest large sums of money for equity and return in order for a business to grow exponentially fast. What we currently have in Haiti are mostly nonprofit organizations who provide grants or who host competitions where entrepreneurs can win cash. Or we have microfinance institutions that are providing loans. Those are the options that currently exist. In more mature markets, you have VCs, you have angels, you have a variety of platforms that support crowdfunding and various ways for entrepreneurs to have access to capital. But in Haiti, the most prominent method for specifically women entrepreneurs to access capital is through microfinance. 74% of women business owners who are seeking capital are going after microfinance. 74%. That's a problem. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because on average, microfinance loans are around $220. No one can really build a big, scalable, global business on a $220 loan. That is the average loan for most microfinance institutions. And so I highlighted in red the investor segment of this ecosystem because the capital component is so little and is almost inexistent to the point where people who want to build big businesses really cannot afford that opportunity. So what ends up happening is that we have fewer women who are going into innovative businesses because they cannot afford equipment or real estate. So a large majority of businesses in the Haitian tech ecosystem or in the Haitian entrepreneurship ecosystem led by women is mostly in retail or hospitality or services. So you're not going to find a whole lot of businesses that require robust machinery, space that can hire hundreds of people. because the access to capital is so limited. So I wanted to paint that picture to give an image of an ecosystem that is very mature in a developed market like Italy, that works really well, and that supports the growth of entrepreneurs and innovation at large. I gave an example of an emerging market where the entrepreneurial ecosystem is still very nascent and new, but a lot of actors are coming in and playing a really big role in supporting the growth of that ecosystem. And then I zeroed in on the Haiti entrepreneurial ecosystem, country where I am from, and what that landscape looks like. Now, it's a very new, a very nascent ecosystem, which means there is still opportunity for it to grow, but there is a need for more actors to come and play, particularly investors who are looking to invest in businesses in a non-traditional way. So the traditional venture capital method of Silicon Valley may not necessarily be effective in a context like Haiti that is volatile and high risk, right? But there is a need for these actors. So I wanted to just share a few other things, but because I'm running a little bit out of time, I just want to paint a picture once again of the ecosystem gaps that exist in the context of Haiti right now, and where people who are paying attention or who are following today on this conference can see themselves as potentially playing a role to close those gaps. Now, some of these gaps are limited access to information. So if you are in the media space and you work in writing articles or blogs, or you make videos or host conferences like this one that allow people to have access to information, it is critical for us to have more platforms that exist that are doing more of that type of work. There is limited access to capital, as I shared. There are only three main ways that entrepreneurs can actually access capital today, which is through grants, competition, and microfinancing. And so other actors who are looking at how to disrupt access to capital in the Haiti startup ecosystem, this is a right place filled with opportunities. Limited access to networks, events, associations, organizations that help bring people together, allow entrepreneurs, specifically in Haiti, to be connected to people across the globe and be able to access markets in Dubai, in San Francisco, in New York, in Abidjan, just by making these linkages. So we are in need of organizations, entities, and associations to organize the ecosystem and bring them together through networking events. There aren't enough. Limited access to global exposure. Events like this, Women of Vision, and many other events that are happening in Haiti are also critical to bring a certain level of exposure to entrepreneurs for people who are looking to discover who is who and who is doing what. But there are too few events happening right now that provide that level of exposure. So if you are in the events industry, or if you are in a space that is looking to highlight entrepreneurs through global streaming, then there is ripe opportunity in that space for you to also tackle that gap. Now, the last two is there's a high cost of doing business in Haiti. As I mentioned, it's a high context environment, extremely risky and with political volatility. So for people who are looking to provide services to entrepreneurs that can lower their cost of accounting or legal advice, there's a huge opportunity there as well. And then finally, limited usage of technology. A lot of startups and businesses in Haiti at the moment are struggling to actually leverage technology in their business. Sometimes it's as simple as leveraging social media. So if you are in the space where you are providing services that can support entrepreneurs in their technology development lifecycle, there is a massive opportunity there as well. So as you will see, there are many gaps, but in every single one of these gaps lives a tremendous pool of opportunity as well, but you have to be willing to take the risk. As the founder of an organization that supports women entrepreneurs in Haiti, I wanted to close my talk by sharing a few women entrepreneurs that we've supported in the recent past. So last year, 2020, we hosted an accelerator program called the Moonshot Academy. And we supported 10 women entrepreneurs who were building sustainable solutions for a more prosperous Haiti. And I'm gonna say their names, just like I said the names of the trailblazers that came before us. Christine Larac, who is the founder of Atelier Collab, who is building solutions for sustainable architecture and sustainable cities. Bernice Charles, who is the founder of Cosmos Solution, who's building solutions for clean energy for us to be able to power our homes and power our communities. Nélange Saint-Cyr, who is the founder of Valplast and building solutions for waste management. Danielle Jean-Pierre, who is the co-founder of Zimbali Networks, who's building solutions for financial inclusions, enabling street vendors to be able to exchange through digital currency. Melissa Sanon, who's the founder of Mediti Organic Teas and Spices, working very closely with agriculture farmers to be able to create a sustainable food and agriculture value chain. Vanessa Pierre, founder of Eco-Renew Solution, who is also leveraging technology to create waste management systems that are more effective in Haiti. Christelle Paul, founder of Atelier Kala, who's focused on preserving artisan craft from our culture and creating sustainable jobs of the future. Olguine Metellus, who's the founder of Copo Coffee, who is creating sustainable food and agriculture value chains specifically focused on coffee farming. Sandina Jérôme, founder of Note Pays, that is a legal tech platform that's allowing people who have access to land or who are looking to have documentation to their land connect with a notary that is reliable in order to get that paperwork validated. Land management is a huge problem in Haiti, and we know how much that hurts farmers and so many other people who are managing personal land or family land. And then finally, Lisa Jude-Georges, founder of Regal, who is building a agriculture marketplace and traceability tool to allow people to trace their food from farm all the way to their plate. So this is a picture of the incredible women entrepreneurs who are operating in Haiti, building solutions for Haiti, building sustainable solutions, leveraging technology, and for whom building an entrepreneurship ecosystem that facilitates their growth could be extremely powerful for them as leaders, but for them also as job creators of the future. I'm going to end the conversation by just sharing some of the women in tech organizations that are global, that support women all over the world, not necessarily just in Haiti or in Africa or in the US, that support women all over the world. They are many. Springboard, Pipeline, SheEO, Women Who Tech. They exist to support specifically women who are building businesses with a technology component, which means that anywhere in the world, any woman who is building a platform can have that level of success. Now, the only thing that comes as a barrier is the internet to be able to connect to these women, or language. If you're not an English-speaking person, you may have difficulties connecting with these entities, but they exist, and they are many, and there are more. So that was just to show that the ecosystem supporting women-led companies, and specifically women in tech, is vast and growing. And there are many, but there needs to be more. Now, I want to share a quote before I close this talk by Madam C.J. Walker, an entrepreneur who inspires me tremendously just by how bold she's been in building her business and inspiring other women to be just as bold as her. She said, "Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." Thank you.